Hey, I'm live. Come on in. All right, I'm a little early. Um, that lets me to know that I need to mute this phone. All right. Hey, everybody. Sending messages to people. So, hi. I got in early. I think it was important to do that. I'm hungry. All right. Hi. How's everyone? Oh my gosh. Let me check the audio. Audio is good. Seeing the audio drivers are playing nice. I have my water here. Forward to your people. Let them know I'm online. That it's live. It's happening. Ah, I am going to keep the momentum up. I am going to make this a weekly feature with, unless I'm traveling. I am going to make it, momentum. And I find that having the momentum really helps. So I still have 2 minutes out. Hi, everybody. My name is Simone. Let me adjust the screen a bit. Okay, I think that is good. All right. Or I should boost my seat up some more. I feel like my hair is a mess. I haven't done my hair in forever. I haven't done my hair for the year in terms of curling it or anything else. But good night, good night, good night. I am back, part two to last week's live, and I am going to definitely be keeping the momentum going. I am going to give another minute or two for people to jump in. Uh, Happy New Year. I can still say that. It's still early in the year. So, Happy New Year to everyone. I am definitely busy these days, but I'm trying to find a balance. One of the things that I've been looking at is work life balance for 2026. And I don't work, I'm retired. That pisses people off. It still surprises people too. But when you work for yourself, you end up working quite a lot. And I don't want to work a lot. So I'm trying to find what's the sweet spot. But with that said, tonight I am going to be focusing on the ignition tier. Now, quick fast forward, I'm going to be looking at 5 things that would lend itself, if you have these particular things, if a career in compliance would work for you. And if you have them, definitely. But beyond that, there's a bit more that I am going to be offering tonight as well, just to have a discussion. Of course, if you jump in on the chat and you want to say where you're from, I am always happy to hear where people are tuning in from. So that gives me a bit of context that I'm not just out here like a Saturday night DJ and people are listening. I know I have my people who are supporting me, and I thank you, thank you, thank you. One of the things that I've seen is that I have now, it's 2,474 subscribers. Feel good about that. And I want to thank the new subscribers for joining me, the ones that joined even when I wasn't pushing out content all of that often. And then, of course, the ones who were with me from the beginning. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, for the subscribers, you're the ones that can comment. For my lives going forward, people who are subscribed will be the only people who can comment. So if, and it, I mean, it's, come on. I'm giving the content for free. You can subscribe for free. So there's a bit of a trade-off there, and it helps me out. It also helps me out if you like the video. It also helps me out if you share the video because it will help other people to find the video as well. Now, it's 7:01 and I am thankful for the people that are on. And so what I'm going to do tonight is focus on a career in compliance for those who are looking to whether switch out of another area of work. I am going to be looking at this from the perspective of recent college graduates who are thinking about where they want to go, and as well as people who are already in compliance, but you're kind of at, an entry level or intermediate level. Now, with that said, if you are a chief compliance officer and you're watching this to support and everything else, woo, I have London in the house. If you are a chief compliance officer, chief risk officer, you will still find this relevant. And you may even find the community space also very, 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 very relevant. I am so stoked to see London. I know it's late. I know it's late. So again, welcome for those here live and those for coming after the live. For those that may be new to me, my name is Simone Martin, and I am the CEO and founder of Ignis Solutions Limited. I worked as a regulator for almost 23 years, and before that, I was an auditor for almost 4 years. And from as far back as 2003, I've been teaching formally, like adjunct faculty at our local community college. And then when I thought I had retired from that, I was called back into service around 2014 to be a facilitator for ICA courses. Now, I see Anguilla in the house. Thank you, thank you. Now, from that teaching experience, of course, there were overlaps because as a regulator, I got a lot of exposure, but it also allowed me to realize it was something I was good at. I also identified while I was a regulator as an unconventional one, approachable, but unconventional. Because regulators tend to be very conservative and very docile and mild, and I am not conservative at all. And so the areas of expertise in terms of my teaching, where I've taught and where I'm properly qualified, is compliance, includes compliance, governance. I am also, I think, well-rounded for risk and risk assessments. And of course, then I dabble in fintech. I do have a certificate from a university that's random. You could check out my LinkedIn profile if that's relevant to you. But yes, I've played the field as it relates to the regulatory ecosystem, and I've actually taught on a number of these areas. And in addition to teaching, I've also drafted guidance. A fair amount of the guidance that's in BVI, I actually drafted quite a few documents. So the guidance is to help people understand how to apply certain parts of the law. So even from that perspective, I have experience in terms of my engagements. I see Barbados in the room. Boop, boop. So tonight's live is going to focus on, and you see the reading glasses up there. I'm still getting used to it. Actually, I might need like the real glasses right now. So tonight, I also published a book, 2024, 10 Tips to Help Compliance Officers Soar. It's in Amazon, and I'm going to update the description after this live. And the Compliance Officer Planner is back, but it's fully digital. So it's not too late to get yours for 2026. Now, on to the topic for today, plus my disclaimer. Now, even though I'm retired from regulation, I have to give a disclaimer because regulators, even if you retire, you know things and then you can't talk about them. So from that perspective, the views on this channel are all my own. It's for entertainment purposes. That's the YouTube part. And the things that I say do not reflect the views of any regulatory authority or international standard setter. Now, with that out of the way, let us dive in. So tonight, we are going to be looking at whether a career in compliance is right for you. And you might be thinking like, okay, well, I want to be the chief compliance officer today if you're not that already. But if you are in the categories that I outlined earlier, recent graduate from college, you might have a job in compliance, but you've just started in the field and you're brand new to the space, or you're working in something else and you want to transition into compliance. I think that tonight's live is definitely for you. The question you might be asking yourself is, what attributes do I need? Because there are things that may be attracting you to the opportunities in and around AML compliance and more broadly regulatory compliance, because it's not just AML, which is anti-money laundering, lots of acronyms in compliance. But what some people will hear is that the money can be really good. In some places, it is excellent. And in the Caribbean, I find it's lagging a bit, but I think that the tide will shift because of the pressures on compliance professionals that have been occurring around the world. It's coming to our shores. But the need for skilled professionals is only increasing. Now, there are a lot of global shifts, and there's Davos happening right now with global leaders talking about the future of the world and different facets of it, especially in the fintech space. Maybe next week's live will touch a bit on the fintech space and compliance. But it requires a lot of those global shifts require deeper understanding of compliance beyond those who think that, all right, this is something that I could just kick off to artificial intelligence and that they can do it. Here is an interesting tidbit for you. AI will not replace people in compliance, full stop. What it will do is enhance the capacity of those who truly understand compliance. And why is that? Compliance is shifting data. So it's really hard to program in certain applications or artificial learning, even if you get large language models and you teach a particular AI model to do certain things, you still can't replace people. It'll help you work more effectively and more efficiently, but you still can't replace a lot of, you can't replace people. You can't. But again, that is another discussion we can have in a different space. So tonight I am going to be looking at 5 traits that would make persons more suitable for a role in compliance. And I'll give you all 5 up front. First, are you detail oriented? Do you have a knack for attention to detail? 2, can you communicate well? And that means verbally and in writing. 3, do you have investigative skills? Can you analyze things and research, or know how to get more information if something needs that? 4, critical thinking, not to be confused with investigative skills. And 5, working well with others. Now, giving you all 5 up front, typically in my lives of years gone by, I've not done that. But I've given you them up front, but it's important to break them down. So first I mentioned was detail oriented. And so jobs in compliance require focus and attention to details for sure. I have seen a lot of window dressing in other careers, and people can kind of skate by. Window dressing and compliance will not help you. And so when you're looking at how well you are paying attention to details, it may be something as simple quotation mark, as adhering to internal controls. It could be something as simple as proper documentation. Documentation is a big one because people might think like, I fill out most of the form, but that should be fine. Think about it from this vantage point. If you have ever filled out a form for an ESTA, the entry requirement for the US, or a passport application form, you can't go through the form and say, well, I filled out enough, I don't need to check this section off, even though it's a requirement. No, you have to document everything in that form, whether it be paper or electronic. And it's the same attention to detail that is required for so many things in compliance. And then in reporting, when you are providing reports, you have to make sure that you're getting the right detail, because sometimes omitting one thing can make the difference in terms of whether something has the right impact or communicates the right message or is in compliance. Let's just focus on that. It may be that missing one thing means that you're no longer in compliance. Good example is a time-based compliance requirement, filing audited financial statements. You're supposed to file them by a particular date. Don't get cute and say, well, oh, I thought close of business meant 11:59. No, that's not close of business for the firm. So again, make sure that you're detail oriented. There are areas like due diligence, ongoing monitoring, risk assessment, and a few others that require detailed reviews. But let me touch on due diligence because I think that's one of the areas where I have a bit of a tiny bit of a pet peeve. Maybe not so tiny, but due diligence is a requirement for AML compliance, anti money laundering, counter terrorist financing compliance, and regulatory compliance. It is an international standard that is bedded down by the Financial Action Task Force, FATF. Yet it is one of the areas that triggers the most fines and enforcement actions. Now, why is that? It's because firms miss the fact that the devil is in the details. And part of the thing that breaks down with the due diligence process is that some persons feel that they know what is required and that they understand what the due diligence requirements are, and then they really don't, right? And so it's also part of why I don't like the use of the term KYC, or know your customer. Due diligence is so much more than know your customer. Now I know you might be saying, well, Simone, that's a bit pedantic, it's just how they refer to the thing. But words mean things. And I'm going to repeat that phrase later on in relation to one of the traits. Words mean things. And when you say know your customer, people will conflate that to, well, I've been a customer at this bank since I was 6 months old, and they have my passport information, they have this, they have that. Why are they asking me for more details? Why is KYC taking so long when they know their customer? Because that's not what the process is. It's not to get your updated passport information. And I would love for banks to really understand that as well, because even to banks get it wrong on a lot on a very regular basis. But let me not dive down that rabbit hole. In terms of other areas of compliance that require detail oriented focus, there are a lot of other aspects. Suspicious transaction report filings is a big one. So big that they have firms that now have dedicated divisions just for making sure that you file them. Now, let's bring back in artificial intelligence. You might have predictive or generative tools, AI tools, being used to help with your transaction monitoring. It comes back to that detail oriented disposition to make sure that forms are filled out properly, that the AI is not triggering false positives, and a number of other things. So, again, detail oriented traits are definitely helpful. Second is communication. I have to speak about communication because it is a necessary trait if you want to get a job in compliance, but also to rise up the ladder in compliance. And why is this? It is not just about written reports. Communication means that you have to be able to speak well. You have to be able to write reports well. You have to be able to get your point across without losing people. And so it's not just reports or delivering them, but also who is your audience? Are you writing a report for other directors, for the board of directors, for other managers? Are you writing something a little brief or circular for staff? Are you writing a regulatory report? Who you are actually communicating to makes a world of difference. And we've heard in growing up, there's always some version of this. It's not what you said, but it's how you said it. Hear that in relationships a lot. But it's very important in compliance as well. It's important for you to understand that words mean things. And that's another thing that I've seen in my career, that a lot of compliance professionals, whether senior or junior, still get wrong. Sometimes they might see an issue and the issue is, it needs addressing, but it may not be a major issue. And the reports are sensationalizing this like it's an extinction level event and the asteroid is about to hit Earth. Don't just throw words around because you want to be impactful. Throwing the wrong words around, whether in a verbal or written communication, will make you sound like the boy who cried wolf. And then people will not be inclined to take the value that you want out of what you say or what you write when you lean into certain words for whether sensationalism or what have you. And if you need to look any further in terms of why this is not a good thing, look at the news or don't look at the news. You have people being whipped into frenzies over politics and a number of other things. And I find it to be an interesting discussion because I had a discussion earlier today about separating yourself from the noise and actually looking at the actions, because people are communicating certain things because they want the message to be received in a certain manner. And once you apply that type of discernment to what is being communicated to you, I think your personal development and your professional development will be better for it, but also in a role, in a job, even if it's not compliance. Forget about compliance for 10 minutes. Well, not 10 minutes, 10 seconds. Forget about compliance. Whatever your role is, make sure that you're communicating effectively. And that requires understanding how to phrase your messages. Now, I see I have more people joining me. Please, if you're finding it helpful, make sure you give me a like, help out the YouTube algorithm, and so that people can see the video, it gets into more people's feeds, and hopefully get some clarity in compliance and how it impacts you. So on to the list. So the third thing is investigative skills. Now, compliance. As a regulator, in my career, I had to apply quite a bit of investigative skills in relation to applications or complaints or other information that was brought to my attention for handling. The same is true on the other side of the regulatory divide. If you are in a firm and working as a compliance professional, you have to be aware that there may be a need for you to dig deeper into some cases. Having investigative skills like understanding what questions to ask or where to look for additional data is vital. Now, I've heard a lot of compliance professionals talk about how you have persons in leadership positions telling them they ask too many questions or you don't need to look any further. And you might be wondering, well, how do I deal with that? That's definitely a discussion that's happening in ignition. And so don't discount your investigative skills, and definitely do not be dissuaded from using them, especially if it is that you have a sense that there's more that needs to be documented. You should definitely do so and make sure you explore and take your notes, document for yourself as well. And that's not even a plug to the planner, the 2026 planner. But it's important for you to have effective compliance, for you to investigate, for you to document, and of course, you have to gain your skills over time. But some people are naturals at it. The fourth one now is critical thinking. Now, critical thinking is it is one of the more important elements for a good compliance candidate. Why? It has to be applied almost daily. You have to, let's use the example of regulatory requirements. Laws are changing all the time. Now, I will tell you at the start of my regulatory career, the laws were there, not much had changed. When it did change, it was a gentle change. Think about turning the temperature up by 1 degree. You don't even notice it. It's minor. And now the pace of change is like, you're going from blizzard to desert, to sauna, temperatures or hotter, and then back again. There's so many changes that are happening. And being able to interpret regulatory requirements and how it is applied to your firm is an example of critical thinking. Now, some people might say, well, that's above my pay grade. But you want to have an opportunity to go up the ladder, right? So you need to demonstrate that you have thinking beyond just moving the widgets from left to right. So you have to consider what may be the best approach to dealing with something. So for example, let me give a very straightforward example. Most, if and not everybody on this live drives. And you could have two ways to get to a particular destination. One is a straight road, and one takes a little detour around the way. The straight road has street lights, two schools that are going to be let out in a couple of minutes, and it's very narrow. So, you have to go slow up in certain areas, versus the other route that's a little longer, but no street lights, no schools, very good flow of traffic. You apply critical thinking. Your critical thinking will say, well, if it's time, school is going to let out, I need to go on the other route, versus, oh, there is no school, it's the weekend. And because it's the weekend, there are not people at work, so there's not a lot of traffic parked up on that road. I can go this way. And so that's an example of critical thinking in everyday life. People, sometimes you say things and people are like, oh my God, what does that mean? Critical thinking is very straightforward, but applying your mind to gather the data that is relevant to you to make a decision on how to proceed. And it's the same thing with compliance. So a client provides you with information, due diligence information. We're using the due diligence example. And you see that the passport looks a little funny. You go and you check online, and you see that, all right, you use Wall Check, Wall Compliance, one of the other tools. This is not an endorsement for any of them, not being paid or benefited from any of these tools. But you go on your firm's tool and you see that, okay, it looks like the person's picture, but it looks a little rough. This doesn't look like the nice pristine copies we get. What may be amiss? Now, due diligence is important. And if you get my passport and you provide that picture ID page, it proves that I have a passport. But am I truly the person that you're doing business with? Or someone who looks vaguely similar and can coif themselves very well and make up themselves and hold a certain angle if you ask for a face-to-face reference? A passport page is just evidence that you have somebody picked up a passport on the street. So what's the differentiator that this is actually the person I'm doing business with? What type of question do I need to ask, or what other assessment do I need to do to make sure that this is who I'm getting into business with? And it could be that it is my passport, I'm the person that you're engaging with, but I may be a straw woman, a front man, front woman for some criminal mastermind, because the criminal knows that, hey, I'm going to pop up on FBI's most wanted or sanctions list or some other organization, where you would get a big, nice fat X through their name. And now I have no reason to be asking for this business or this bank account in this jurisdiction or what have you. But because I am taking a good, healthy cut to be the front woman for this criminal, you get the passport and it's like something doesn't feel right. So you need to have that critical thinking skill to make a determination as to whether, hey, should I apply more checks, or should I just, in the case of a trust and corporate services provider, incorporate away because Simone looks like an upstanding citizen. And so it may be that you incorporate the company, or open a bank account, or provide whatever other service or financial product is being asked. But in relation to the thing that made you feel uneasy, critical thinking should also trigger you to say, all right, we need to monitor this relationship to make sure that maybe I saw something and it wasn't that, and it should be fine. Or does it impact your risk assessment? And so these are some of the things in terms of how you will engage with work that makes a difference. The fifth one is to work well with others. Now, this one is an interesting one for me personally, because personally, I think I work great with others, but there are some people who will not agree with that. And of course, when you work in large groups or large organizations, you will always have people who have a varying opinion of working with other persons or with key people. In my career, I have people who I think, and based on what they've said, to my face at least, and I've heard come back to me, that it was a pleasure to work with me. There are others who think that I basically reside on one of the levels of Dante's Inferno. And that tends to happen. Now, when you work in compliance, you may be positioned as one of those that sits in one of the levels of Dante's Inferno. But compliance is a team sport. And even if you are in a small firm, you have to be able to work well with others. And that includes the people who are not in the compliance on the compliance team. So one of the other things that I've heard from compliance professionals from around the world is that they're often made to feel like they're playing on the opposing team when they work in the same organization. And this is especially the case, sadly, when it is that the board of directors doesn't support compliance and the tone from the top sees compliance as just a component because the law requires them to have compliance and not that they think it's important. And note, I didn't say that the regulator requires them to have compliance. It is the law. That's a pet peeve of mine as well. Oh, you have to fill out due diligence because the commission says so. The commission ain't tell you nothing. The law is what requires you to complete due diligence on a risk-based approach. But off the soapbox for 2 seconds. But firms can have the best compliance practices, and I've seen it. I've seen it. I've read about it. You could have read about it. You see the news stories all the time. Going back to the biggest area that attracts a lot of penalties is due diligence. And it is because they get it wrong. And when you go and you look at some of the cases, especially with the US DOJ, so the Department of Justice, when they went after TD Bank and some of the rest, they had beautiful compliance procedures, puff, chef's kiss, but they were basically digital paperweights or just taking up space on drives. Gone are the days, one or two of them may have a printed something somewhere, but gone are the days where you can rest back on compliance practices and say, right, we have compliance procedures, but stop asking questions because you have found out. And look at TD Bank for all their trouble getting the biggest fine ever on the planet for poor due diligence. Like, that's still a thing. So you could have the best compliance procedures and still have crap compliance. I wanted to use another word, but now working with challenging circumstances is, some would say, a part of the character building process. I would say it's a part of what caused people to need to de-stress and make sure that they have work-life balance. But there are strategies for dealing with some of the challenges in compliance. I will tell you this little quick story time in relation to directors who may not support your compliance means and this framework. There are often times when directors in firms that have a not so healthy compliance system will say, listen, you don't need to be exploring all of this. We could do this without all of that drama. And I would say to you to document, because at the end of the day, it is going to come back to you, right? Because when it is that certain people get in certain rooms, will they defend the compliance officer? Sometimes not, but it's important for you to have a means of protecting yourself. Now, it might sound like all doom and gloom, but there are firms where it is, you're properly embraced. And there are a lot of strategies to deal with this. And again, this is something that we will cover in Ignition. Now, I know I said 5 things, but if you've been to my channel before, you know I love to give bonuses. And so the last one is to have a learning mindset. Compliance is dynamic, and I alluded to that earlier in terms of how many regulatory changes, international standards have changed in the last 20 years. There's been more change to international standards and regulatory compliance in the past 5 years, 5, 6, let's go with 6 years, than there had been since 2000, from 1999, 2000. So much has changed since I started out as a regulator and continues to change. And it requires compliance professionals, be you a regulator or a compliance officer or compliance admin, it requires you to do heavy lifts. And if you want to excel in this space, you need to have a learning mindset. It is one of the things that I really appreciated I appreciated that fact, and it was kind of low key for me. Like I always enjoyed the learning process, but it was really pulled out of me in the last decade. And I had a lot of opportunities to learn. Some people will say that, well, oh, Simone, at the commission you were able to travel. You didn't need to travel to learn. And there are a lot of things that I was able to benefit from, not even from traveling, but just being curious. So that's one of the other traits, being curious, and exploring. And years ago, there's still so many more opportunities. But years ago, the Bank of International Settlements had a financial services institute of sort. I think it was, their acronym was FSI, and they had certain courses that regulators could take. Some of them for free. You just had to get your manager to sign off on it. And in other cases, you didn't even, you just, oh, you had this. And you could just go through. It's almost like you audit a course and you do your reading. And so I did a lot of reading. Persons in the BVI who know of me, there are people who don't, they don't know me personally, but they know of me. They knew that I used to spend some ridiculous hours at work. But what a lot of people don't know is that sometimes I would get down a rabbit hole of research. And if it is that I saw something that was different, it looked odd, or it might have been a new take on an old regulatory approach, I would go down a rabbit hole and read. So I used to do a lot of reading from the Monetary Authority of Singapore. I did a lot of reading when the former Financial Services Authority had their share of licks, and it was the HBOS report, some failings of the regulator, where they talk about regulatory capture and regulatory forbearance. So regulatory capture is when you have a regulator, an authority, not an individual, but the whole organization, that seems to be so aligned with a particular regulated firm that they have been essentially captured in that they now no longer have moral authority to act in a manner that is fair and balanced when it comes to that particular firm. So they miss things, and it's basically like you're on the field playing instead of being the umpire or the referee that stands above and see that people are following the rules, and then you can blow the whistle, get this person off the game. They weren't in a position to do so. So the H-Boss report, I remember when the Puppet Masters came out in 2013, when and the Puppet Masters was a really good read, and a lot of people don't know, and it was free. And now it is a paid, I think it's like 300 euros or something like that. And the Puppet Master was a report that came out that was done by Jason Sharman and some others. I think he's at the University of Cambridge, or was, plus some others, where they did mystery shopping around jurisdictions on their ability to set up entities to defraud governments of tax revenue, or for nefarious purposes. And they found that offshore jurisdictions like the BVI, like Cayman Islands, they couldn't set them up. They could not get that done. But in other countries, in G20 countries, they were able to be setting up companies without any due diligence or anything. And so, that report, I think when it came out, shook up a lot of international standards. But it also was a wake up call to say that, hey, these offshore jurisdictions that we had as the devil incarnate actually do this thing better than we do. So it's one of the resources that will be again in the member space. I'll put that in. I just have to make a mental note to myself to put it in, because it's no longer free. But if you have it and it's free, you have it for the rest of your life type thing. So it was one of those areas that, and I'm on a tangent of a rabbit hole, but I loved the learning process. And as compliance continued to evolve, it helped me to help others. And so if you enjoy learning new things and building on what you've learned, then you will also be able to evolve in the space. But what is the problem I find right now with people who are curious about compliance is that they don't have good foundations. People telling you that, oh, money laundering, placement, layering, integration. Like that was so 1990s when, the money counters in the bank was puffing off cocaine powder. That was an actual thing happening. Okay. It has gone beyond that. And, if you want to be really switched on, I'm excited about what's in the membership space because, I'm definitely going beyond just the basics. It's not the basics, but it's also a space to have discussion because there are things I can talk about and that, it's not confidential, but there are things that, YouTube might not want me to talk about. There's certain ones like I can't talk about, the bad guys in Afghanistan and certain other countries freely without, triggering some sort of, suppression or caution or strike on YouTube. So there are reasons why the membership space is important. Um, and I think that, the next steps for you, I think are easy. And I'm hoping you join me. But yeah, if it is that you think it's a good space for you, that learning mindset, I will tell you this, it is for anyone who not only has a passion for compliance, some people may not have a passion for compliance, and that's okay. I have enough passion for everybody. But you may have a passion for learning and continual self improvement, a passion for having a career that you can grow with, that can enrich you, and that can allow you to be employable anywhere on the planet. I think you found the right place. So there you have it. I didn't intend to have a long life. Oh, so let's recap. Let's recap the details. So, what do you need? If what traits should you have if you are thinking about compliance and whether a career in compliance is right for you? The first one, you have to be detail oriented. Think we went through that in good detail. You have to be detail oriented. You have to be a really good communicator. And that means verbally and in writing. And some people are not comfortable speaking. And even to this, doing YouTube, I can tell you my first, and you could go back. I think my first lives are still up. Very first live, I was incredibly nervous. I've spoken at conferences, but I don't know what went wrong that night. I was like sweating and I had to be dabbing, and it was like everybody was like, "No, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You do this all the time." But I was nervous. That whole thing about listening to yourself, some people don't like to hear themselves. That's a fault. That's a default setting in everyone. You'll get over it. You need to actually be able to appreciate how you speak, how you communicate, and how you sound. Because sometimes, I'm going to do this as an example. Sometimes saying due diligence is important doesn't, no. That communicates, yeah, due diligence is important, but it actually offends. If I say to you, due diligence will tell you who exactly you're doing business with, you may lean into that more like, wait, what? But I thought I know my client. You thought you knew your client, but you didn't. And even to inflection in voices is really important for meetings and how to deal with meetings. I have, like, I'll tell you what I used in ignition. How is in ignition. There were strategies that I used even throughout my career. I had to learn to communicate. I have a really good vocabulary. I would think so. I write well, but as I advanced up the ladder, I had to learn different communication styles. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. But I think I've seen enough in terms of how to communicate that to other compliance professionals. And I have communicated that in the last 10 years. It was to the point where at least once a month, I had a compliance officer from someplace asking me something. And this is not BVI compliance officers. These were random people from whether the YouTube channel or at conferences, particularly conferences. And I'm averaging out like once per month. But like I would go and speak at a conference and then people would just descend on me. And I've told a story on a platform before as to why the YouTube channel why the membership, because there are two tiers to the membership. So ignition is for, the starting tier, or people who want to get strong foundations, and then there's another level for persons who are more senior. And that more senior level, you could go in now and see like the years of it, because that's been running since 2021. So you can go in now and see the information that's in there. And like I said, I'll update the links in the description of this video tonight. But I remember going to one conference and talking about something. I don't know what the topic was, but apparently it was topical. And the person, I could take these off. The person said to me, it was a male compliance officer, and met me on the break. And he was asking me all sorts of questions. And I was going through the questions. And I said, you know, answering his questions and things. I said, but these are really good questions. You should probably put them to, I said, well, I will give you what I think is best, but you should probably talk to your regulator. And he said to me, without missing a beat, he said, I can ask you because you are not my regulator. I am afraid of asking those questions to my regulator, and then they use it against me. They come and inspect me, or they feel like I don't know, when it is that I've been asking people in the compliance field quietly, and some won't share that information with you. They might be, or some don't know, or some haven't encountered that situation, so they don't know from that vantage point, or some have encountered the situation, but I'm in a bank and they're in an insurance company, so it doesn't really marry back up. And here it is, I get to ask you. And he's like, and that's the best thing that has happened for this entire conference. He said that. And I was like, and it was like a light bulb went off, because in my mind, I was like, okay, people trying, but they understand it. And I realized that compliance officers were having vastly different experiences, but also vastly different levels of support, and vastly different levels of engagement, whether through associations or what have you. And even within an association, there's still a bit of fear about being ridiculed behind your back by your fraternity. And it's a relatively new profession as a standalone profession in comparison to, directors been around for like centuries. Insurance managers, investment managers over a century. Well, insurance for centuries, investment managers, probably by different names, private banks, centuries. But as a compliance officer, as somebody, as system, you might say, well, auditing has been a thing, but audit, and I used to be an auditor, is different from compliance. So from that vantage point, I think that there's a lot of utility to be had. So I stopped at communication, right? Um, Third is investigative skills. Fourth is critical thinking skills. Five, work. You have to be able to work well with others. So you have to be a team player. And the bonus is to have a learning mindset. So I've said a lot tonight. And I've said what. But if you're interested in the how, in the terms of different things, definitely join me in the membership. Before you go, please like the video. I'm asking for the free likes. Please, people, make me feel special. But the conversation is going to be continued in the membership. And I'm going to be jumping into the membership tomorrow. If you are not able to join, you'll get notifications pushed to you. Once you're a member, notifications are pushed when I'm going live, but I'll have a scheduled time. I'm just waiting for the membership to grow a bit so that I can have a little vote in terms of when is a good time for meetups and sessions, so that it fits you, because it's for you. Yeah, we'll get that on a nice little schedule going. But in there, I'll be going over the compliance fundamentals you need to know. So that means, yes, there will be training for members only. And there's no cost to trainings inside the membership beyond your monthly or annual subscription to Ignition. We're going to be looking at some of the strategic things that you can do to help you in your current career, get your career in compliance, or to advance in your career. And we'll also be looking at, no, I might not cover all of these tomorrow, but we'll also touch on how to get your foot in the door and how to negotiate the best salary. Can only do that in the membership. Again, salary is one of those ticklish points. And again, salaries tend to be lagging in the Caribbean, but I have some thoughts in terms of how that could be fixed. And yeah, if you are watching this session, this video on YouTube after the live, like days, weeks, or whatever, the sessions within the membership will be recorded, so you can still get in and not miss a beat. So, what else happened? So, let's see. I spoke about the compliance planner. I spoke about the membership. I spoke about what we'll be doing. We'll be betting down times for the discussions. Anybody else wants to say anything? I see Barbados, Anguilla, London. I am so happy, London. You really came through, because that's a wicked time zone to be at. But I appreciate you so much. Any other countries in the room? Let me know. Don't be shy. This is where I need the reading glasses. I can make out the names. Belize. Hey, Belize. I'll be seeing Belize next month. I will be in Belize next month for sure. Maybe I get to see some jaguars this time. Any other countries in the chat? Let me know. BVI people, where you at? BVI people are the quietest, eh? All right. Have you given me a thumbs up already, Belize? I think London has. All right. So I will be continuing the discussion, like I said, tomorrow in Ignition, where your compliance journey begins and your confidence ignites. Don't forget, don't forget that I'm going to be doing the lives weekly. Of course, I'll be covering some different topics for compliance officers and people who are different phases. So some of the topics may be a little, fintech. Like right now, I am going to be looking at. Oh, let me talk about what I am going to be looking at. Midnight in London, but it was worth staying up. I so appreciate that. Next week, I am going to be looking at probably the Clarity Act, or stablecoin legislation out of the US, and fintech, some fintech issues. Last year, after I retired, some of my courses were on fintech. I also had an article published by Thomas Reuters Institute on tokenization, and compliance, and some regulatory spinnings there. And so there are a few other things that, a few other thoughts that I have in relation to where fintech and compliance meets. And crypto compliance. There are persons who are looking for careers in compliance. I can tell you that if you have any knowledge about crypto and getting into crypto compliance, that's actually the higher paying end of the compliance framework. So we can talk about maybe crypto compliance careers next week, and a smattering of what I'm seeing in relation to compliance concerns for the digital asset space. So, with that being said, anything else before I sign off and go and eat some dinner? Anything else, guys? Was it good? Did you find it valuable? Did I bore you? I have a 60-second delay on the chat. I need to fix that for next week. And, oh, this is important. And if you are not subscribed, you can't comment. So that might be the thing. So I changed that setting as well. So I mentioned that earlier. So I don't know if you were on earlier and you heard that. But if you are not subscribed for at least 20 minutes before, you can't comment. So I have made that a thing now. I think it's important because I appreciate the support, but I'm giving the content for free. I just want a little, subscribe and that's also free for you. And it helps in terms of getting the notifications out. So, guys, if there's nothing else, going once, going twice, I want to thank everyone who tuned on from London to Anguilla to Barbados to Belize. And I know I have some people from the BVI that are lurking. I want to thank all of you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. I will bid you all adieu, and I will see you here next week for next week's live. So I'm thinking crypto compliance and a few other things. Feel free to comment after the live. I'll still get those comments, or follow me on LinkedIn. I'll definitely be looking out for anything there. I'll post something on LinkedIn really quick so that you can put your comments under that as well. All right, guys. All right. Have a good night and thank you. Bye.